At the beginning of this saga, the coronavirus chapter of our lives, the trouble of coronavirus and quarantine and masks and all of this that are now commonplace was all remote. It was somebody else's problem. We were learning about it like so many things that we learn about in other parts of the world that we didn't recognize, didn't know. They were cultures that were foreign to us. It was them. It was the other in our lives. Those people with that problem and not ours. What happens in a society when the other is us, all of us, when nobody is outside of that circle? That's an interesting dynamic, the idea that there's no them and us in this. All of us are in this together. Initially, I think I naively also thought that this was a problem that would be relegated to certain people, and I was thinking about who are the ones who are most vulnerable, even in our society. And I always thought about the other and the other and the other. And I still do, but I realize now that I've crossed a line, and a line that we've crossed, that I've certainly crossed in my thinking, is the realization that there's actually nobody who isn't impacted by this. Nobody. I just don't think anyone, young or old, rich or poor, any race, any language, any culture, there's nobody who is looking at this staring from the outside. It's not a story of sympathy for other people. It's a story of empathy. It's a story of all of us holding our breath or releasing it together. And one of the questions then comes up, which is, so how do we as people, with a capital P, the global people, and how do we as cultures and countries, and how do we as individuals in our homes right now handle this kind of instability? How do we handle not even the health instability? That's one thing. The other is all of us are dealing with the unknown about what the future looks like and how long this will last. I remember the comedian Stephen Wright said, "I know when I'm going to die because my birth certificate has an expiration date on it." Not the case, and not the case with this. No matter what we read, every day we're reading a different story of an end game, an end date, when we'll be released from our homes, when businesses of different kinds might be opened. There I am touching my face again. I know you noticed. It reminds me of a story that was told back to me recently by a friend who had his wife with coronavirus, and their son had recovered. And at a certain point, he said to me, "Do you remember the story you told me about King Solomon?" And I remembered it, and I want to share it with you. I shared it the other night with some people. The story is of this fabled king, King Solomon in Jerusalem, looking over his entire kingdom. And it makes us think again about who are the people who are invulnerable to instability. Surely someone that powerful and rich, but clearly not as the story tells. King Solomon was dogged by the instability of his life, that S-curve that I spoke about a couple weeks ago. That's the constancy, the instability of human being, of being human. And he went to one of his chief advisors and he said, "Stop this noise, the ups and the downs, I can't take it anymore. Bring me the cure, I have any wealth to give you." And the man went off on his quest to bring the king his solace, his comfort. And he came back with a small wooden box. And he opened the box in front of the king, and the king looked at it and he thought, the man's making a fool of himself, or of me. He just brought me a ring. How can I possibly want another ring? And he pulls out the ring and he looks closely at it, and he sees on this gold or silver band 3 letters in Hebrew, Gimel, Zayin, Yud. And the Hebrew words are Gam Ze Ya'avor, which means this too shall pass. This too shall pass. We need that ring emblazoned. We need it somewhere on our knuckles, on our fingers, on our mind, on a piece of paper in our pocket, something that we remind ourselves when we're in that moment of not breathing, of asking ourselves, when will I go back to work? When will the next paycheck come? When will I go back to teaching kids? When will my kids stop bickering at home because it's going on for too long? Gam ze ya'avor, and if that's too complicated in another language, this too shall pass, because indeed it will. One thing being alive teaches us is that nothing remains the same. So therefore this too, like all other things, shall pass.